in front of her.
Building a better Bay Area for a safe and secure future. This is ABC 7 News.
I can't take this semester off because then I'm going to be set back in my unit.
A lot of students don't really do well with online learning.
I very much prefer in-person learning.
I miss just being in the university life.
There's just a certain feeling you get when you wake up early and you put on your backpack and you walk throughout campus.
I would just hope that I don't regret anything.
The voices of students. ABC 7 is committed to building a better Bay Area. This week, we're focusing on education and what back to school will look like for parents and students this fall. Thanks for joining us for this town hall. I'm Kristen Z.
Hi there, and I'm Leanne Melendez. We are going to spend the next half hour talking with experts about college, what school will look like this year, and if it's even worth it to attend college right now.
Our guests are coming to us via Zoom today. Some quick introductions. Lauren Cook, Dean of College and Gap Year Advising with Jewish Community High School of the Bay and Independent School in San Francisco. Maria Clave, President of Harvey Mudd College in Pomona.
Ethan Knight, Executive Director, Gap Year Association, and Lynn Mahoney, President of San Francisco State University. Thank you for joining us. And Lynn, I want to start with you. You know, California State University system decided to go online in the fall very early on. The decision was made, and I was wondering what was the main factor for that decision? Was it the lack of PPE? Was it the fact that you have so many students there, or was it just pressure from teachers?
It was largely driven by what we were hearing from public health experts. And I think everything we've seen in the last few weeks suggests it was the right decision. And by making it early, we knew that we would provide time for our faculty and staff to actually strengthen remote learning and remote advising and remote services. So we made the decision early based on public health and to allow us time to make sure that we are able to give the students a really good fall.
You're a big public university. Now I want to go to an independent school in Southern California. President Clave, Harvey Mudd is an engineering school or liberal arts, but you're really known for your engineering programs. And I know you tried hard to do a hybrid because you want that collaboration, that lab experience. But given all the factors, including what LA County is looking at right now with the caseload, what have you settled on in terms of the instruction?
So we're still hoping to have about 60% of our students back on campus, though almost all of our courses and our advising and our tutoring and everything else will be online. We will have tents throughout the campus so people can eat outdoors. We will have single rooms only. We will have wearing masks at all times except when you're eating, but then you'll have a plexiglass shield around you. And we will be a completely closed campus. There will be no visitors. You can't have anyone visit you in your room. So we'll have about 60% of our students doing that. And we'll have about 33% of our students studying remotely, though many of them will actually be living in a shared apartment somewhere in the country with a handful of other students, because our students are so deeply committed to learning collaboratively. So we basically have made our regulations as strict as possible. And it's not something that would really be feasible at a large institution, but with only 533 students expecting to be on campus, we have single rooms only, we have quarantine and isolation space, we'll have a 2-week in your room quarantine when you first show up. So we've run our plans by a couple of top health experts, and they say it should be really safe.
It sounds very organized. Ethan, I wanted to ask you, some students have decided to take a gap year this year. Is it the most sensible thing to do? As I understand it, not many organizations are traveling.
Correct. Yeah, we've definitely seen a lightening of the international prospects. To my awareness, there's only about 3 or 4 countries that are accepting U.S. students at this point. But I think a lot of students are really faced with the decision: do I continue online learning? What if I do take a gap year? Could it look like? And I think still to this day, the applicability and the benefits of a gap year are just as true, although the format is changing ever so slightly. Just like all of us were contending with the same circumstances as for COVID that all of the rest of us are. And so we've seen a lot of innovation in gap year programming, a lot of adjustments. It's kind of interesting to see a bit of a renaissance in the onshoring of gap years, because so long they've been known as an international destination. And that is still a significant part of sort of a traditional gap year prospect. But increasingly, the onshoring means they're coming back to the domestic side. A lot more programs are hanging a shingle, which is great. So we're, necessity is the mother of invention. So we're seeing a lot of new ideas and opportunities show up. Unfortunately, just like colleges, most of the gap year providers have had to reduce their overall capacity within the program. So more programs in number, fewer spots on each program. And just to give you a benchmark, Knowles, Outward Bound, 2 of the most well-regarded outdoor-oriented gap year programs domestically, both of them are full and on wait lists, not only for the fall, but also through the spring. We have seen an absolute growth in the gap year market.
I want to bring Lauren Cook into this conversation. At your school, Jewish Community High School of the Bay, what percentage of your seniors that graduated opted for a gap year this coming year?
So this year, it was about 1/3 of our senior class. And generally, we're anywhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of our senior classes. So it was a little larger this year. But the interesting thing was most of those folks had those plans or were making those plans before coronavirus hit. So they've kind of stayed steady with that. I've been checking in with some of them this week to see what's happening. It's an interesting time.
To what extent are you getting some questions from kids or thoughts regarding, we heard from the university presidents, Clave and Mahoney, about the restrictions on campus and the classes being mostly, online. Did the kids express that that is not what they're looking for, the ones that are opting for the gap year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a full range of things. Some students, while disappointed with thinking about starting college online, are choosing to go ahead and do so because they feel like it's the best fit for them amongst all of the options. Other ones, are going ahead with their gap year plans. Some folks, I know that several students are actually still leaving for Israel at the end of the month and know that they will quarantine for 2 weeks when they get there, but then their programs will run with, I think, some social distancing and all the other sort of public health guidelines being adhered to. Some have chosen to sort of back away from some of the gap plans, especially that involve international travel, because it just feels a little too extreme in this environment, and are choosing to go ahead and enroll at their colleges. It really just depends student by student. I did field a lot of queries in the middle of the summer about, Ms. Cook, should I continue on with my plans, whatever they were? Mm-hmm. And we really had to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, we wish them well. And we want you to join in the conversation as well. Go to Facebook or YouTube to weigh in and interact in today's conversation. We're taking a break on air, but the conversation continues on our live streams right now.
And we are on Facebook. Thank you so much for watching this special town hall focusing on colleges. I want to address some of your questions. Eliza Fernandez, you are commenting that online classes is not the same. People can't learn very well. I feel bad for the students wasting their time. I want to throw this out there to our university presidents with us today, either Lynn Mahoney or Maria Clave. To what extent are you trying to beef up those online experiences so that students or their parents don't feel like it's a waste of time?
Well, I would say that we heard pretty strongly from our students and their families that the online classes were much better than they expected. And, I think a lot of this is that our faculty, and I'm sure this is true for San Francisco State as well, they actually really love teaching. And so, and what they want out of the teaching experience is to have engaged students who are learning. And I heard from lots and lots of students that it was so much better than they thought it would be. Their complaint, and that's why we're trying to have students back on campus, is it was hard to collaborate with each other online. And so even though most of our classes are going to be online, even for the students on campus, they will be able to collaborate. Over to you, Lynn.
I think we experienced the same thing, that we were kind of shocked at how well we did, given that most of us had about a week to pivot to online learning in the spring. And so what I've been most impressed by is, thanks to the federal funding that we received through the CARES Act, we were actually able to really augment our professional development for our faculty. So we have over 1,300 faculty this summer participating in workshops to perfect their teaching remotely. So I think that students will have an even better experience in the fall. At our university, where we have many low-income students, what was a challenge for us and remains is student access to technology and computers. So again, thanks to the CARES funding from the federal government, we've been able to acquire many more laptops, many more hotspots. We're working on keeping part of our library open for students who need quieter study space. So I think it's going to be a good experience in the fall, better than many expect.
Okay, great. We're going to, I believe, take a pause quickly, and we're going to go then back on camera in just about 3 seconds.
I want school to be safe. I want to make sure that it's okay to get back on a campus when the time is right.
I would like school to go back to how it was before, but I know that that's not likely to happen.
I'm hoping that things will be safe enough to go back to normal and have everyone back onto campus.
I think it's most important that we prioritize the health of our students. And so I wouldn't like anything to go back to in person if it wasn't safe to do so.
And we're back with this conversation. Maria, I wanted to address something, of course, declining enrollment throughout the entire country. Colleges are experiencing this. That means, of course, fewer dollars getting to you. Will that also mean layoffs?
If we're allowed to have students back on campus, we will not have any furloughs or layoffs. We are cutting in lots of other areas, but we will not have pay cuts, and we will not have layoffs.
I have to ask Lynn the same question.
So our enrollment issue is compounded by a state cut. And so the CSU did receive a very substantial state cut this fall. So like many of the CSUs, we will be forced to engage in some layoffs, but not touching faculty. We will still have the faculty to teach the courses and the advisors to advise the students. So we're prioritizing the core needs so that students can continue to achieve their academic goals.
Lauren, I wonder, given the fact that universities, whether private or public, are making some tightening of the belt moves because of the budget constraints brought on by COVID, does that make an impact in terms of how you advise students whether to consider an independent or a private school, I should say, for college, or a public school, due to the different funding and how much likely they're going to be cut and what that means for the section and courses available?
Yeah, I mean, I always advise students to have a varied college list, and both in terms of their chances of admission, right? Whether places they might be more likely to get into or might be more of a reach. But we always think about finances as well, and what they're likely to be able to pay for and what also might be more of a reach. So I think we're obviously going to be paying a lot of attention to that this year. I always encourage my students to have CSUs on their list as an affordable option closer to home, UCs as well. And then, if they are interested in private schools and out-of-state schools, absolutely to be looking at those. But there's a lot of unknowns financially during the pandemic. And so I think families really need to be covering all of their bases so they have some solid options next spring.
Ethan, I want to ask you, since you're the expert with regard to GAP programs, still some people are traveling, as we just heard. Are you asking parents, families to sign a waiver? And what happens if someone is abroad and they get sick?
Great question. Well, all I can say is the back to protocol or back to field protocols that are being developed right now, they're 70 and 80 pages in some cases, and most organizations are trying to leverage 3 or 4, as well as additional support to make sure that they're actually sort of practicing the safety that is so important. We're seeing a lot of organizations, every organization is absolutely leaning into a quarantine. That varies based on whether students are driving sometimes, whether they're flying sometimes. There's been a lot of debate, and organizations are all over the board in terms of, do we do a pre-departure test, a day 1 test, a 5-day test, and a 14-day test? Most of us are actually getting certified as contact tracers to try and be able to be as informed as we can about the subject. Indeed, I think some of the challenges now are especially in the insurance arena. And so organizations are having to contend with what kinds of liability waivers do they have to do, what types of coverage will be there. I don't think you can call the coronavirus an act of God anymore. It's not exactly a force majeure, because we all know it's here. And so students are, if they get COVID while they're overseas, generally their health insurances are covering them. But generally, they're not going to be evacuated. They're going to have to hunker down and see themselves through until they're ready to travel back, depending on the severity of sort of what their case is. Happily, mostly with youth, it's been pretty benign, but I don't want to sort of say that sort of so blatantly, because it's all over the board for each person.
Ethan, I'm glad you brought up testing, because that is something I like to ask of Lynn and Maria. How are you implementing testing and contact tracing on your campuses? And to what extent are you using testing to ensure and say, okay, this student can, in fact, stay in the dorms, live in the dorms, and let's say if they went off campus, do they have to retest? Ladies, you were so good at handing off to each other during our Facebook live stream. I'm going to start with you, Lynn, and then you can hand off to Maria.
So unlike a smaller college, we really will have very, very few students on campus. Our housing capacity is well over 4,000, and we're going to have less than 500 students on campus. We have 26,000 students. We're going to probably have less than 1,000 on campus over the course of the whole semester. So our students are going to do electronic health screenings to access the buildings. But testing at this moment, we don't have plans to regularly test them. Obviously, if they're symptomatic or they've come into contact, we will engage with that. And we're working with the San Francisco Department of Health on how we'll approach that.
And the advice, we are doing very similar things at Harvey Mudd. The advice we've gotten from the Director of Student Health at the Claremont Colleges is not to do mass testing when students come back, but instead to do a very strict quarantine in their rooms for 2 weeks. And we are also doing symptom checking every day for all the students who are on campus and any faculty or staff who come on campus. And anyone who has any symptoms will be tested. So that's the approach we're taking.
Okay, well done, Maria. Thank you. What could school look like in the fall at any grade level? Well, go to abc7news.com for an interactive look and to get some of your back-to-school questions answered. And we'll be right back. Could I just ask Maria quickly, how do you tell teachers, how were they feeling? I've seen many professors sign petitions saying they didn't want to go back. Was there a problem or an issue there?
We didn't have an issue there because right from the very beginning, we said that any faculty member who wanted to teach from home and online only would be able to do that. And I'd say the biggest problem we're facing for our faculty is for faculty with young children. We know that the schools in Claremont will be online only, at least for the beginning of the semester and possibly for the entire semester, just because of the situation in LA County. And so we're busy trying to figure out ways to help our faculty help each other in terms of those kinds of things. And we're trying to give as much flexibility in terms of scheduling of times of classes as possible.
I had a question for Lynn. If you're going online, and this is a question for many colleges, will you lower the cost of tuition?
No, we will not lower the cost of tuition. We are still, we're providing instruction. We expect that our students will make the same degree progress remotely that they would have face-to-face. And so we're still paying our faculty, we're still paying our academic advisors. The only thing that we have reduced are some of our fees. So for example, our students pay a fee every semester that gives them unlimited access to the Muni, to public transportation here in the city. If they're not here, they're not riding public transportation. So user fees we have reduced either in part or entirely. But tuition, our goal is to have every single one of our students continue and make the same progress they would have if we had been face-to-face.
All right, ladies, thank you so much. And Ethan, I'm sorry, ladies and Ethan. We are going to come back on air to finish our conversation, our last segment. We want to start with talking about admissions, testing, advice for current seniors, all that kind of good stuff. Coming back in 10 seconds.
The thing that I like the most about distance learning is that I have a lot of time to do my work. But the thing that I like the least is that I found it very difficult to manage my time.
Distance learning loses out on a lot of the most important and valuable aspects of the education system that we have.
I think being in a classroom environment, it allows students to be more engaged with what they're learning.
Distance learning, I don't like it at all.
I don't think that I can focus the same way that I can in a normal school setting.
We're all figuring out how to carry on.
We are all trying to figure out how to carry on. And for this year's seniors, there are a lot of questions with regard to admissions and how that process has changed. So we are lucky to have with us two university presidents, Lynn Mahoney of SF State and Maria Klawe of Harvey Mudd. Ladies, if you could talk about the changes in your admissions policy and also testing, whether that's required or not due to COVID. And this time, President Klawe, we'll start with you.
Well, we are going test optional for all the obvious reasons. This is the first time that we won't be requiring SAT or ACT tests, and I'm sure it will be fine.
So you'll look at other factors more closely?
We always look at other factors very closely. So this will just be one, one missing piece of data, and I don't think it will really hamper us much at all.
All right, President Mahoney?
I agree, and the CSU has done the same thing. So we're not requiring test scores for admissions. And then the other thing we've done is we've introduced some flexibility in the high school courses that students were expected to complete. Some may complete a course for credit now instead of for a letter grade. So we're being flexible about that. And then moving forward for the students, this year's freshmen who chose to go to community college instead of coming directly to San Francisco State, we generally don't allow them to apply again until they're upper division transfer students, until they've earned 60 units at a community college. We're actually going to change that for these groups now and allow them to come in as lower division transfers. So a student who took a year at community college can apply again this fall and join us next fall.
So much more flexible. Maria, I wanted to go back to you because this is a question that I had that's very important. I'm sure you've been asked this 1,000,001 times. How do you police students? Will you ask them to sign a waiver? Will you ask them to pledge that they will try to stay safe? What are you going to do about that?
Well, we're very fortunate. So first of all, yes, they're signing a pledge. And we'd be very clear about the consequences of not following the regulations. But one thing that's incredibly special about Harvey Mudd is that we have a student culture that essentially says it's every student's responsibility to help every other student succeed, and it's real. So one of the ways of helping other people succeed is to keep them safe and healthy. And so we're just making it very clear how rigid our rules are. And we've just said to people, we don't want you on campus if you don't want to follow these. In that case, study remotely. And we also provided financial aid to allow students who are on financial aid to cover the cost of renting an apartment somewhere across the country with others, so that we can be really sure that we haven't forced any student to be on campus who doesn't want to follow the rules.
You mentioned consequences. What are the consequences?
Okay, number one consequence is you'll get sent home right away and you're not coming back for the rest of the semester. Now, obviously, if it's an honest error, and there'll be a warning first, right? You know, you walked out of your dorm room and you forgot your mask. Well, I have done that at least once in the last 3 months. So
we all have.
Yes. So there'll be a lot of social norming, everybody's wearing a mask. Where's your mask, Johnny or Joe? So, so there'll be a lot of social norming. We also have, I think we have an incredibly positive supportive culture. And so I think I'd be very surprised if we have a case of, say, a party with 7 people drinking alcohol together in a dorm room, because we've just made it so clear that that's what will cause people to get sick. And when people get sick, even in the age group of 18 to 22, you can end up in hospital on a ventilator.
The honor code. Maria Klawe, I've got to say, and Lynn Mahoney, after our town hall today, and I'll check in with Lauren Cook on this, I bet a lot of kids are going to apply to Harvey Mudd at SF State, even more than usual, but I'm going to follow up. Thank you all so much for that conversation. We found that fascinating and insightful. We'll take a short break on the air. The conversation continues on our live streams. Be right back.
I also wanted to mention that the president of Notre Dame just told all their students, they went back this week, that the world is watching them and that they have to behave. Are you going to be watching some of these colleges that are either doing the hybrid or in-person learning to see what they are doing right or wrong?
I think I speak for every university president who says we read everything now to see what other people are doing and what the outcomes are so that we can learn, because this is not going away fast. So we have to keep adapting.
Yeah, and I was just going to
go ahead.
I was just going to say that the other 4 undergraduate Claremont colleges are doing online only, and I think they're going to be watching us very carefully to see how it goes.
Sorry, I have to apologize, Maria. I forgot that you and Lynn like to follow each other without even prompting at this point. That's terrific. I do have one more quick question for Lauren. I know we have about a minute left. And Lauren, and that is for the kids who are seniors now who are panicking, feeling a lot of unease, what advice would you give them as they start that process? The Common App is now open. What would you say to them?
Big question. But I would say a lot of pieces of this process are the same. It's still important to do good writing, to do well in your classes this fall, to bring to those applications your most professional, complete self. I think the testing question is one that has been, really asked a lot this week, as we're seeing some testing open up this summer and some cases of coronavirus coming from testing centers. And so my biggest piece of advice to students right now with testing is to really look at what colleges are asking for. And I really appreciate the CSU and Harvey Mudd and so many other schools being test optional or even test blind, but those places that are still asking you to go into testing centers, to consider that carefully as a sign of how they consider your safety.
Yeah, I have to say my daughter took a test this morning and it was live. Okay,
all right,
so
we're coming
we'll
back
be right
on air.
back and we're going to take a short break.
And we want to thank our panel of experts today for taking time out of their busy schedules to talk with us and with you about back to school for college students. You can learn more about the issues on abc7news.com and on the ABC7 News app.
And all week long, we'll be talking to experts in education, leaders in child development, families, and teachers. Each day, don't miss a Bay Area conversation about different education-related topics. Now, tomorrow, we'll discuss what the new year will be like for teachers.
All of the important back-to-school information you see this week is available on abc7news.com and on our connected TV apps. Wherever you watch ABC7 News, you'll find our special back-to-school ongoing coverage.
And with that, we say thank you for joining us for ABC7 News at 4 o'clock. Now, ABC7 News at 5 is next.